Hello everyone, welcome back to the OmniStudio series. I'm Vishnu Kumar, and in this session, we are going to talk about Data Raptor Actions, and we will be covering all the four Data Raptor Actions that we have with the OmniScript. So, to understand like how we can call it, right? It's a straightforward. You can drag and drop the Data Raptor action on this step as well as before and after of this step, right? But how we pass the data and how we retrieve the data back, right? So that's the question. So just to give you an like overview, we have like two data raptor where we have extract and turbo. That means we are getting data from the Salesforce, and then we have load data raptor. That means we are like inserting the data or updating the data in Salesforce, and then we have the transform data raptor, and we are not actually updating or anything like that. We are just transforming JSON data to one kind of data to another kind of data, right? So how it works in OmniScripts that we don't have any parameters or something like that that you can define that, okay, I want to pass this data in this tier, right? Instead of that, entire OmniScript data JSON get passed into the data raptor whenever you call data raptor action, right? So in this example, you can see that this is a like typical OmniScript data. We have timestamp, user ID, username, right? And then we have one block that I created just for example, and then in that we have another block, then we have two inputs, right? When you call data raptor, then entire OmniScript JSON data will be passed to the data raptor. But we can control what we are passing using the transform option, right? We have like send transform, response transform, right? So we can control that. And similar applies to the when we receive the data. So we can receive a lot of data, right, in multiple nodes. But if you want a specific node, you can control that using your response transform node. So let's get into the org and let's see these in action. So I'm going to create a new OmniScript called Data Raptor Actions with. So now we have this OmniScript, and just to show you what I will do, I will have like two inputs on two different steps. So first one, I'll call it like first name, and it can be anything, right? And I will clone this step, and here I will name it as a last name. Okay, so if I go back and preview it, so we have our JSON data where we have these by default, and as soon as you type anything here, you will get your other nodes like step 1 first name, step 2 last name. Okay, so first we have these, that's it. And now I'm going to utilize these data raptor. Okay, so let's go through the data raptor extract action first. Okay, and what I will do is I will create a new data raptor that will fetch all the accounts. So if you want to learn about the data raptors in deep detail, please visit my other videos in the same playlist. And here we will do like operator with field name, and I will put hard coded ED for now. Okay, and I will create extract path for account number, accounts details, account number. So I'm making a complex JSON, right? So I can show you how the transform works as well. And then I will put the name. So basically we are getting the data, and the data format of that we will be getting is like account details and the array of the records. So if I execute, we are getting the data like around 4 records. Okay, so let's go back. Let's see, preview. So because our action was on the top of this step, it got automatically executed, and we did receive the same nodes, right? So we don't have the control. If you have two data raptors with the same node, right, then there will be a problem because it will override, right? So accounts details, and then we have our records, right? And before we go to the direct send and transform here, so this is how you can pass your parameters. Okay, so I'll I'll do one more thing. I'll create a set value, so I can show you like how we can pass anything. So in set value, I'll create account name, and instead of that passing uh, or using the hard-coded ed on the data raptor, we will pass through here. So we have created an account name variable, and if I go back in the data source, I'll select the account name. Okay, and in the filter value will be a variable name that you are going to provide here. So here I'm providing ACC name in data raptor. Okay, and filter value. Okay. So whatever we have in the account name should be passed to the ACC name. Okay. So just to make sure that it is working as expected, I will remove the D and just will keep the E. Okay, preview. So now you can see that we are getting a lot of data wherever we have E in account name. Okay, and let's go back. One change that I did in set value is that I removed the single quotes, because by default the value is text, right? So you don't need to define the single quotes here. So now we are getting the data, and now let's jump to the response transformation part, right? So the data that we are getting, the first thing that I would suggest that whenever you have the data raptor, my suggestion would be always use the JSON node, right? And JSON node will define a new node name, right? Rather than accounts, it will define another node. So if you have two data raptors and they are returning both same kind of nodes, right, then one will override to the each other, right? So if you have data raptor, and if whenever you're calling them, if you define your own variable, unique variable, that you need to make sure that is unique, right? So data raptor con not contact, actually account extract data raptor. Okay, let's preview it. So now we have like a parent node called account accession data raptor, and then we have the accounts and details, right? So now it's good, right? So every time you have a new data raptor, you can define a new name for it, right? Now we don't want to access data like this, like accounts then details, right? We want directly this node details, right? So in the response transformation, you have response JSON path. Um, Here you can define. So let's go one by one. First, you are defining that I want accounts node, right? You are still getting the details, right? Because you have removed one hierarchy, right? So you are getting directly accounts, right? Not the node of the account. So whatever you have inside the accounts, not the accounts itself. Okay. And now if I do this details, so you will get what is inside the details, right? So now if you see, you have this data raptor name, then you are getting the data like this, right? So this is how you can utilize the send and transform, and it's pretty much same that we have done in the past with the integration procedures, right? It works exactly same. Okay, cool. So this is how you can do the data raptor extract. Now let's go to the next data raptor, and it's pretty much same. So I won't spend much time there, but I'll show you like data raptor turbo action, and same thing, you can define your turbo data raptor here. You can define your input parameters and you can define your response. So I will quickly do all the same thing here. We have account name, we have acc name, okay, and in the response transformation we will have something else. Let's for now let's skip this, and then we have a new node. Okay, so the new node would be called as account turbo data raptor. Okay, and I will create a new turbo data raptor for it. So here I am selecting account object, path is kind of similar, accounts details, and then filter on name, like filter, and the filter value should be acc name, and the fields that we want is like account name, billing city, and name. That's it. Okay, so now if I go back and preview it, so we have one node called account extension data raptor, and then we have another node called account turbo data raptor, where you have the your JSON, right? And obviously it not works the same way, right? When we have defined account details, right? It will be considered as a string, not as a path, right? So my suggestion would be, let's keep it simple, accounts. And so when you're getting the data back and you don't want the account node, you can go here, response, and you can just simply define accounts. Turbo extract. So if you see this here, we have account turbo data raptor, and you are getting the data directly from the accounts node. Okay, so that's we have in the response, and both of the data raptor to get the data from the Salesforce. Okay, so now let's go to the our third data raptor, which is post action. Okay, so to do that, I will move the data raptor on this step, right? So, and here I'll name it as create contact. Okay, and I'll create a new data raptor called create contact. So first I'll select the object, and then we need to define the fields, right? So there is a benefit if you create any data raptor from the OS using this button. It will give you the input JSON, right? Based on what you have currently. So we have like one step, two step, and then every step have the one input text, right? So it will give you the input JSON, and it will help you when you are selecting anything here, like it is showing you step one first name, step two last name, right? Because I told you like the entire JSON get passed to the data raptor. But if you already have a data raptor and you are not creating from here, then you might not have the this input JSON, right? So we will consider the same. Then we don't have this, and we will do everything from this guys, right? So input JSON would be your step one, and then we have first name, and this should be mapped to the first name of the contact, and then we will add another field called step two, where we have last name, and we will move it to the last name of the contact. Cool. So that's it. Let's go back and let's view it. So if you see this, right, it executed, um, and it returned the contact ID, right, the new contact that it got created. And if you go to the extract data chapter, we can see the all the logs here, create contact. And if you see this here, create contact, it will tell you like what was sent when this action was called. So object list, so this is what was passed, the entire JSON node of the OmniScript, user currency code, name, right? Then you see account extract data raptor, right? So whatever data you fetch through those two data raptor was also got passed. And then at the very bottom we should have our step, right? And if you see in the response, it will tell you what was passed. Obviously, the entire JSON you will get back, not on your node of the OmniScript, but you will able to see the in the logs, right? And then you get your contact ID that was created, right? But if you see this, this is where I see a big problem, right? Even though you just need two fields, but you are passing a lot of data, right? And we don't want that. Okay, so we can control it by passing specific node. Okay, and how we can do that is send JSON path. Okay, so what we want to send, like for now let me do this step one, and I just want to pass this step one, right? I don't want to go into much detail, but I just want to pass this step one preview. Although we will receive an error because the last name is required here, snow. Okay, so if I go back in the action, this one where we have the error, so you can see that now object list only have step one, nothing else, right? So you trim down the data what you are passing there. Okay, so obviously you can't pass two nodes like step one, step two, right? It will be always one node that you can pass, right? So maybe like what you can do, either you can utilize the set values and combine the JSON there, but it will be too complicated, right? So example like this, right, you can pass the entire OmniScript, but if you had these inputs in one step, then you can pass obviously only one step, right? So I'll delete this step. So now we have step one, both of them contains the last name and first name, right? Now as you're passing the only step one, we might need to update our data raptors here, because here it is expecting step 2 rather than a step 1, right? So now we have both the input text from the step 1 first name is step 1 last name. Okay, if I go back and preview this, I'll clear the logs. Okay, so our data got created, and if you see the data, step 1 was passed, first name and last name. That's it. It worked perfectly fine. Okay. Send JSON node as something, let's say you don't want to call step 1 there, right, in the data raptor. And these things, will be useful when you have reusable data raptor, because if you are inserting one contact on one place, right, it can be utilized on the other place or from other OmniScript, right? Then you don't want to change the data raptor, right? So let's say if I have one OmniScript here which is passing data like step 1, then we have another OmniScript that is passing data through the step 2, right? But we don't want to update the data raptor, right? So we will keep our data raptor with the standards, right? So we'll call it data, and here we will also call it data. So whoever is utilizing these data raptor, they must pass the data in this format, right? So how we can do that here is we can define that node here, right? So we are saying whatever we are getting from step 1 should be passed through the data node called data. Okay, so if I preview it, and I can show you this. Next, create contact, request data. So if you see the request data now, we have a node called data, and then we have first name and last name. We don't have now this step. Okay, so that's send, and we have already covered the response transformation, right? So now we have the fourth data raptor, which is transform data raptor, and it, as you know, that it only just transform the data. It does not commit the data in database, and it don't pick the data from the data base as well, right? So we will do a simple example that whatever we are taking in first name, last name, and that we want to show as a concatenate first name and last name in the name field, right? And obviously we can do in formulas and all those things, but just wanted to show you like how transform works, right? Create new data raptor, transform from OS dr, same thing that we are expecting, and formula here, right? So we are expecting a node call step 1, and then we have first name there, and then we have last name. Okay, and the result path would be full name. Transform input JSON would be full name, and output JSON should be full name as well. Okay, so just to see this in action, so we are getting full name perfectly fine, right? And now let's utilize this transform dr action, go back and preview it, clear the logs. Okay, so first we have transform data raptor, and you can see we pass the entire data JSON because we didn't specify it send and response. Okay, so here if we see somewhere we should have the step 1, and in the response if we go we have the full name getting back. Okay, so and if I go to the data JSON back, we can see that we are getting the full name here. And I will do some complex transformation here, like complex field name, right? So I'll call it like data, more data node, and then full name. If I execute it, data, more data node, and full name, right? So I can show you like the send and transform, even though you know how it works. So same thing in send, JSON path, we just want to send the step 1, right? But now we don't want to call a step 1 in the data raptor. We want to call is like input data. So the same change we need to do in this, right? Because we are expecting now input data, not the step 1. So whatever we have in the step 1 will be passed as an input data node, okay? And then whatever we are getting here, we want to filter it, drill down to like data and more data node. We don't want everything, right? But before we do that, let's see how it working right now. So next, if I go till this down, we have data, more data node, then we have full name, okay? And if I go to action debugger and transform action, you can see now we are only passing the step 1 data and renamed as a new node called input data. Okay, if I go back, now response JSON path, we want data and more data node directly, and a new node of JSON that we want is contact full name, not just the full name. Okay, I'll clear the logs. Okay, if I go back here, now we are getting a node called contact full name, where we have the full name object. Okay, and even though if you want to drill down this full name, you can do that, right? So you will directly receive your full name inside your contact full name. Okay, so let's do that as well. The node is called full name. Let's preview it for last time. Next, contact full name Vishnu 0to1Code. So we have covered all the 4 data raptor with passing the input parameters as well as utilizing the send and respond transformation. Okay, so that's it for the today's video, and see you in the next session. Thank you. Bye bye.